morning, everybody. We're live finally. And welcome to the community of practice from CSRA on high energy control assessments in practice. Now, this has been a very, very hot topic lately, so we're very excited to bring you this panel. But before I go into my content and to my dearest panelists right here that you see on the screen, I'd like to tell you a little bit about who we are as Construction Safety Research Alliance and what our vision is. And our vision is eliminating serious injuries and fatalities in heavy civil industries. Now, everything we do, all of the research, all of the industry implementation we support is in the name of eliminating serious injuries and fatalities. Now, today's topic is high energy control assessments, and we have about 10 minutes presentation to show you what the research is like. And then I'll go to my panelists for a Q&A type of panel discussion to talk about how they started off, how do they use it, what are the next steps, what are the advice they have for people who are just starting off. Now let's go into the research presentation. So we started these community of practice series this year with energy-based safety. And we talked about what hurts people are different than what kills people, right? Low severity injuries happen for different reasons than high severity injuries. And they have to be addressed differently. But to do that, we need to first define safety correctly, right? For us, with modern safety, safety is presence of controls, not absence of injuries. But if is presence of controls, then we should be able to answer this question today, right? How do we measure safety? How safe is this job? Now, if the injury rates or recordable rates or the fatality rates of this job currently is zero, does this mean that this job is perfectly safe? Well, no, right? So researchers asked this question. We talked about it last month about is recordable injury rates are a good metric. We answered that question is it is not a good metric for decision making. Well, what are we going to do then, right? The future of safety measurement is not events, it's conditions. We should be able to understand, monitor, and arrange the conditions so that the workers are safe in their work environments. We need a metric that captures exposures to risks, but also successes. Like, what are the things that we control really well? We should be able to do it always. And we need to do this before an incident happens, right? We need to answer this question, how safe is this job, before an incident happens. So HECA fits right in the middle of our safety measurement. We set up our safety system in a certain way. We want it to protect people. We also record and learn from our incidents. But we needed a real-time answer to how safe is this job. And we needed to answer this for serious injury and fatality prevention. So we covered these in energy-based safety, but we started with the basics, right? Physical energy released to a human body causes energy. That's 101. That's the energy wheel. We know that more physical energy release causes more harm, right? If you trip off and fall on the ground, you'll likely get less injured than you fall off a cliff. So, more energy, more harm. And we have these icons, they're called stuff that kills you, sticky hazards, that most likely causes a serious injury and fatality. So we define those too. And then we know we define safety as presence of controls, which means how well we control this serious injury and fatality risk is going to be how well we control this hazardous energy. And we have a very, very strict direct control definition. We have a direct control And to be a direct control, even, it has to be targeted at the high energy. It has to work if it's installed, verified, and used properly. And it cannot be vulnerable to human error. This is the most important thing. So I find it very easy to talk about what is not a direct control before we talk about what is. So supervision, risk assessments, procedures, standards, these are not direct controls. Supervision, spotters, things that are there that are controls, but they are vulnerable to human error. Those are not direct controls. Direct controls are engineered systems that will prevent energy release to a human body, like a fall arrest system, like a hard barricade, things that will keep our workers safe even if they make a mistake. So, after knowing these two concepts, serious injuries, sticky hazards, high energy hazards, and direct controls, defining HECA is quite easy. HECA is the proportion of high energy hazards with a corresponding direct control. Now, I'll show you what that means. When you would like to collect a HECA, high energy control assessment, you go onto a site, you observe one crew performing a task during work. This is a monitoring metric, right? We're going to monitor. We look for high energy hazard, sticky hazard. In this case, you're looking at a fall from elevation hazard. And then we look for a direct control that will counter that hazard. And in this case, it is hard barricades and on the edge. And it is targeted at the high energy, right? Fall from elevation. If it's installed properly, it should keep somebody in, even if they faint, right? And that would be the not vulnerable to human error piece. And the rest is easy. If there's a sticky hazard and a direct control, we call it a success. If there's a sticky hazard, no direct control, we call it an exposure. HECA score is simply the proportion of successes overall. Now, here's an example. Let's say I looked at my site, one crew performing one task, and I saw 9 different sticky hazards around them. What do? I look for direct controls and if they exist or not, right? For each and every sticky hazard, I look at if this is an exposure or a success. It seems like I have 5 successes here. So 4 exposures, my HECA score would be 56%. Now, I would also like to mention that this 56%, 60%, 70%, these are very, very normal. In our work sites, the reality is that we work with about 40% exposure all times. And this risk is a risk that we carry across the year. It is vulnerable to human error, so we depend on our people's training, the procedures, the additional indirect alternative controls. But at the end of the day, what we are able to do is now we can monitor SIF risk. Now, what we can do is that we can accumulate this data and then we can see which sticky hazards do we see more often, in which tasks, where, in which teams, in what kind of work, right? We can ask all of these questions to this data. So this HECA metric is a monitoring metric and is for the safety professionals. So if you're here as a safety professional and want to learn from this, it is basically for you. You are now then can use this data for your decision making and know where your risks are. And there's a lot of industry backing to this work. So one of the biggest ones is Edison Electric Institute. So HECA was designed in Construction Safety Research Alliance, but it was taken to implementation by Edison Electric Institute. There is a lot of resources that were created to make sure that this data can be collected consistently and can be comparable across companies so that people can learn together. And one message I'd like to give here is no one company will solve the serious injury and fatality issue alone. So what we're going to learn together, and consistency is very, very important for our data collection. And I'm sure the panel will tell you all about that later. So I'm going to leave the slide on for a second because these are a lot of very good resources that are specifically for implementation. Now, there's a lot of research options, but today we're going to talk about HECA in practice. So I'm very excited to move on to the panel discussion. Now, here we are. Everybody can hear me? Can I get a thumbs up? Awesome. So I'd like to kick us off with a question about starting out, right? How did you start your HECA journey, and what kind of buy-in did you need as you kick things off? And I'll start with Nina. Please start with a quick introduction and answer as you like.
Sure. Thanks, Alif. And just doing an audio check. You can hear me? Okay, perfect. So, Nina Gattuso, I'm the Director of Safety and Human Performance at Exelon. And I want to say that this journey was not something that happened overnight in terms of our HECA implementation. We began on our HECA implementation journey in 2023. And we saw this as an opportunity to take what feedback we've received with traditional safety observations in terms of looking for a system that could help us capture the data in a more seamless way in real time, as well as how do we grow upon the energy based concepts that we had implemented through the energy wheel. So we started in 2023, and so the implementation strategy focused on a new technology to capture the data, as well as a training design and development of materials to roll out. And we knew that the strategy needed to not only focus on safety professionals performing the observations to collect HECA data, but also our first line supervisors, in order for us to be successful in implementing across all of our operating companies. So those were like our two main audiences. We focused on the technology, the training design, and we also wanted to bring in the users of the tech, so those first line supervisors and safety professionals, into the development of the tool that we would be using to leverage HECA. I will say that there was a lot of bringing the C suite along, right? So, advocating for what we would gain through creating a monitoring metric and knowing what safety in the moment looked like at Exelon. So that, was building upon the foundation that we had set with energy based safety and the energy wheel. So, at a really high level, our focuses were on technology to capture the data, the audience of who would be conducting the observations, and then developing and designing the training.
Absolutely. And I guess one follow-up question to that. Did you face any skepticism as you kick things off, and how did you present the value while doing so? Because it was a big effort, right?
Yes, yeah. So, yes, of course, there's always skepticism, right? Whenever you're going to implement something new. And really, the way we looked at it is we needed to align our strategy and what we were doing in terms of redefining safety as the presence of controls, and we had to adopt how we were working and how we were assessing safety on the job to mirror that strategy. And so that is the lens we looked at. And from a broader strategic standpoint, was just another piece of the puzzle to start building out that suite of safety metrics that we needed to get to. And so that's really the foundation that we've began to lay down and laid down as we embarked on HECA implementation in 2023.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Well, now I'll move to Doug. So you're different. I think your industry is different than Patrick and Nina. So you're bringing a very unique perspective here today. How did you start off?
Yeah. Yeah. So Doug Rosenthal, Director of Safety for Ryan Marine. Um, we started when part of the ROI project, Arnie came down to one of our projects down in Florida, and we trained up, part of the experiment for ROI, we trained up some engineers to do HECA to collect data. it was at that point we thought, this is pretty neat. We're gonna try to dip our toe into rolling this out, and I think kind of very quickly we actually put the brakes on it. Um, and it's kind of a, I guess we had the wrong approach in terms of trying to get the frontline supervisors and foremen doing it. And I think we needed a few more things. We knew alternative controls was still kind of in the works. We we're waiting for that data because when you start rolling it out or presenting this to engineers, they see that 56% or whatever, and that's a D or an F from all their grade school years. So we knew that the alternative controls could help get you some bonus points on HECA. We also, and this happened sitting in a skiff with Arnie collecting data too. Is like you said, we do different work than kind of where HECA came from. EEI, we do pile driving. We work from the Caribbean all the way out to Hawaii. We got suction dredges that are dredging in the Gulf, and we kind of a lot of our high energy hazards seem to be in that other category. So we wanted to make kind of our own sticky categories or sticky hazards and start training on those. And we kind of quickly realized that the shit that kills really that the field latches onto that pretty quick. So we kind of turned our direction to getting sticky launched. We got kind of a whole rebranding. We got rid of this Target Zero campaign and changed that up. So we're like in the process right now of rolling out our sticky boards and getting that all launched. So HECA will be next for us to get that implemented. So we've been kind of start stop, and I think it's been good. It's helped get more buy-in by just introducing it, getting some feedback. And as far as getting like C-suite bought in, it helped. In this process, we hired a new VP of legal, and he came in from oil and gas, and we pitched at a meeting. He's like, you guys think this is something new? That we've been doing this. I've heard of this for a couple of years now. That as things seem to come from the energy sector in regular construction, um, we kind of get the opportunity to refine it now. So that's where we're at. We're kind of on hold, but we're chomping at the bit to get it implemented.
Right, and I think you made a very interesting comment about Target Zero. Wow, you're
Sorry.
popular. So the Target Zero is very interesting because it's almost the opposite of HECA, right? HECA is telling you that you have to be comfortable with a number that is a number, and
Yeah.
Target Zero is more like we gotta be perfect, and it's very hard because there. I mean, it has to be SIF risk zero, which we know to be not true. So and then I now understand why it didn't go as well because, well, if you have the Target Zero and your reporting is 60% HECA, and then you really do need that alternative controls because you want to show that you can complete that 40% somehow, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And it's very interesting to me because that 60% is what actually we're trying to train our CEOs, our VPs to be a little bit more comfortable around, right? Like they've been writing the zero for the past 30 years, and now they're going to be not doing that. That transition is proving to be very hard.
Yes. Correct.
All right, Patrick, would you like to get, give your 2 cents here
Yeah,
about
for sure.
start off and
Yeah,
where you're going?
Patrick Winkle, Consumers Energy. I'm a utility in Michigan, and I'm the manager of safety strategy for our team. My story is very similar to Nina in that we're sort of at the infancy, sort of small scale still. We were really using SCL model for a long time. And from there, it was sort of easy transition to how do we better measure safety and what are some of these metrics we're trying to push towards. And HECA really fits the bill. If we all have heard the expression, safety is the presence of controls, not the absence of injuries. Well, this is directly monitoring and measuring that. And at scale, we do think has a lot of opportunity to really measure your improvements over time, if you will. So we just trained our safety team out the gate, and that includes both our craft and management personnel and the safety team. and implemented mid to last year and really are sort of ramping up now across the business.
Absolutely. And for you, I know you started small and then you trained a group. How did the implementation look like for you? Because I know you started small and then you tried to grow a little bit, and then you're producing a form like a software for that one in house. How did that look like?
Yeah, so we started small, got a lot of feedback initially. The tool we were using, we were actually in a transition period, so it really provided a lot of good information on how we want to design the new tool to capture the information, which is now sort of rolling out. So we're sort of in that transition period, but that sort of pilot phase really allowed us to learn a lot and design the system to be sort of easy, but capture all the desired inputs we're looking for.
Absolutely. Now I'll go shift gears a little bit, and then I wanted to talk a little bit about implementation. And I'll start with Nina for this one because you've been doing this for a while in a very big scale. How does the implementation look like? What do you think are the most important components, and how do you look after that? Basically, how does the system going to work out now? And I guess one more thing I could ask you is, what would you do differently if you started designing this today?
Lots of questions, Alif.
I
So
know,
I'll
I
start.
know.
I'll start with let me dive into a little bit. So I mentioned who, we use in terms of first line supervisors and safety professionals. So we started in 2023 with discoveries on building the tool that we're using for data collection today. And we also, in the last quarter of 2023, developed and designed the training. Our training was 8 hours. So it was a full day of classroom training with hands on scenarios as well as hands on with the tech that we're using to collect the data. And the tech that we're using is also mobile friendly, so you can do it on a device real time in the field. We started with a pilot group. I love pilots, always believe in, starting small with a little population to collect that feedback from your heaviest users. So we started with a population of safety professionals and first line supervisors, and that pilot ran for about 8 weeks. And that was in the first quarter of 2024. What I will say, one thing that, we were early in HECA, right? There wasn't a lot of folks through EEI doing it yet. We were one of the early adopters. And if I had to go back and do anything differently, I think it would have been to have more scenarios that were focused on our various lines of business. Because I think that, what we're seeing today in terms of the EBO quality is because we didn't have scenarios quite yet with photos that touched on all our lines of business at Exelon. So that is something that I would do differently. And I still think that there's an opportunity today to kind of reintroduce those scenarios that may be more applicable, excuse me, as we're looking at our data quality. So that's something that I would definitely do different today. So we did the 8 hour training. And then once we felt that the tool was stable, we had collected feedback, made any enhancements to the training, as well as any tool tweaks. We went full scale implementation and trained over 1,000 first line supervisors and safety professionals from March to June of 2024. So we haven't hit a year yet of doing energy based observations, but we're coming close. And we're still, I really want to emphasize, we're really still focused on the data quality and the quality of the energy based observations that are being conducted. Um, I think what we are seeing though is we've got some stories that are coming out through HECA where first line supervisors have corrected direct control usage on the job, or limited control usage. That's our term for alternative. And as part of our rollout, we were fortunate enough to have someone who was participating on the research team at CSRA for alternative controls. So we were tracking with where the research was going and where the project team was going. So we did train on alternative slash limited controls as part of our rollout so that if there isn't a direct control, we're also ensuring that there are limited controls in place and that data is being captured. But the stories we're seeing are starting to show us, yeah, EBOs, truly energy based observations and HECA improve safety in the moment, right? This is from a different lens that we looked at from our safety observations, where we're really focused on those high energy hazards. And we're also seeing the conversations in the field between our first line supervisors and frontline employees shift to really talking about and discussing those hazards that have the potential to significantly injure someone and could not send you home at the end of the day. So they're having more meaningful conversations. And I think ultimately, too, what we will see is organically, our first line supervisors will become more technical because they're asking more technical questions related to the high energy hazards, corresponding direct controls. So I just think there's a lot of benefit to be gained. And although we've been doing it for a little while, I would say that we're still just at the infancy of growing our data sets as well as ensuring data quality. I see this as the opportunity to, hey, where did we kind of meander with our traditional safety observations to keep energy based observations on the right track, ensuring data quality, and ensuring that they're really driving those meaningful conversations. So
Thank you
I
so
hope I
much.
addressed all your questions.
You definitely did, and I think there's some interest from the chat because you talked about the scenarios, right? The how do
Yes.
we teach people how to do HECA observations, and the answer. So the question is, how do we make sure the consistency between individuals? Why are they collecting the data? And the answer is what just Nina was talking about. The training and the calibration cases are there to make sure people see the same hazards, evaluate the direct controls the same way. But Doug, you're next in line. How did your implementation and training look like, and what did you learn during the process?
Yeah, so we just copied a lot of what Arnie came and did for us, where it was, kind of exactly that, where we used pictures from our jobs and have people pick out the high energy hazard and where they have a control or not. And after that project, we rolled it out. We started with our safety committee, which is basically like hypo safety professionals, and kind of got them doing heck analysis, just kind of one a month, just to kind of get some feedback, get it moving, and kind of find our way through it. And I think any advice to anyone listening on the implementation is like just get going, get started. You're gonna find your way through it. It's not gonna look the same at each company. Like I said, the variance, the kind of work we do from the pile driving, marine construction to high rise concrete buildings in our concrete sector and dredging is just so different. We could have decided to do three different programs or whatever to look at these disciplines, but we think it's better for our company just to have one consistent program. So figuring out how to do that, how to make it work, how to blend it with all three of our disciplines, but then still we want consistent data, like Nina says. So I think there's also kind of waiting for some technology to catch up. Now I think we're at a point where we can collect data, and if it is something that's, I don't know, borderline HECA, and for example, one of our stick hazards is drowning. We added that to kind of incorporate everything marine that we know would kill someone. If you fall in the water between two barges or in a fast current or something like that, it's going to kill you. But if that's not consistent with what the model is, we could easily filter that data out and compare it to other companies or benchmark in that way. So yeah, I think it's just get started, start playing with the technology, figuring out ways to collect that data, and then as we move forward, like I mentioned before too, I think we'll reel it back in and just it'll be a tool for safety professionals and kind of limit how quickly we roll it out to the rest of the field. Um, that's what Elise said in our dress rehearsal. She's like, "Yeah, duh, Doug, that wasn't. It's not designed for everybody. It's for safety professionals." I said, "Yeah, well, we made that mistake and we found out." So, um, yeah, that's kind of where we're at now, and that's where we would plan on going.
Yeah, and maybe we should repeat that conversation because I think it will be useful for this audience. So the what we were talking about is we really need to use our tools for the audience it was meant for, right? For example, the energy wheel was meant for the site, the frontline workers. Like we put energy wheels on hard hats everywhere they could see because it is a reminder for hazard recognition. Now, sticky is also for the frontline because it's stuff that kills you. And Doug said the proper word. I try to be responsible here. So the sticky itself is for them to recognize hazards that will kill them. But HECA is just a metric. And most companies even choose not to show the percentage to their workers and within the tools themselves because the percentage is not useful. What is useful is being able to capture the direct controls against these sticky hazards and have that conversation while you're doing this assessment. The percentages will become useful when they're in bulk and when a safety professional is looking at them to analyze what's going on and make decisions accordingly. So I know it's a little counterintuitive in the sense that you get a metric on your own as a safety professional, but it's such a big power because then your knowledge, your directionality, the way you show your improvement is this basically through HECA. Patrick, you're next. Would you like to talk about your implementation, how you built the tool, your training, perhaps?
Yeah, for sure. So, looking at the chat too, so I'm going to try and answer some of those questions. But the Power to Prevent SIF site that Nina put in the chat and you shared earlier really does have those calibration scenarios, which are used in our training course. As we've done more courses, we've tried to customize some of the scenarios a little more for the work group that I'm training. And one word of advice I would just provide is if you are going down this path, one of my training courses actually had live work going on outside. So observing live work during the course of the training was very helpful to sort of real time answer questions about some of the concepts and do sort of that virtual HECA, if you will. Um, while the training was going on. So that was really beneficial. If you have a training facility you can do the training at, that would go a long way. And many of us that are doing HECA today are doing a lot of sort of recalibration with folks as you're looking at your data and things like that. I think that's important is you'll start to see trends of, hey, maybe we're not doing a good job of recognizing this hazard, and you can recalibrate the teams as you move forward to get better data quality.
Absolutely, and that happens on an ongoing basis. We're constantly looking for first, did the high energy exist, and did we expect it to look like it is looking? And the second is, do we actually see hazards? And an example to this, and I think Patrick, that's what you're referring to, is we've been seeing a lot of electrical hazards, but no arc flashes. And the question we asked was like, do people really understand arc flashes? And I would argue maybe not that much still. Um, one question I had is like having the live work is easy, but we keep getting this feedback that okay, but I'm watching this site and the high energy is changing and the direct controls may be changing. How do I do this observation for a day or like half a day? How does that look like?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that. Really, it's task based, right? So identifying that task of which you're observing, and if you're out for a while, you might see multiple tasks where you would do a new HECA or a new energy based observation. So, really understanding sort of what that task definition is from the rule book and things like that really helps. because it's pretty easy to observe a task, get the energies identified, understand what direct controls are in place, and then if they move on to another task, you can start a new observation.
Right.
I got something on that, Leaf. I guess um, when Arnie came and helped us, I think one of the things he just encouraged our data collectors to do is just take a picture and then just stop and look at that picture and stop with the what ifs or the continuation or whatever. Just it is whatever you just took a picture of. That's what you do your HECA analysis on. And I think that's where so some of the biggest pushback or the misunderstanding came from our safety guys because we're so kind of ingrained in, well, what if that falls and hits that and hits that and hits that, right? We need to, we're kind of thinking worst case scenario. It's like, well, that's not what we're looking at all. It is this snapshot in time. So it's like take a mental picture, take an actual picture, and then do the analysis on exactly what you're looking at there, not the operation that's off screen or anything like that. Just focus in on the one thing. Otherwise, you'd never stop. Your HECA would be just a, a
Everything.
long list. Yeah, yeah,
That's absolutely correct. I If you don't do that, right, if you don't take the snapshot, then you would go into the risk assessment phase. Like the more rabbit holes you go through, the more risk assessment your hacker will look like. In reality, though, it's just a snapshot metric. What you're seeing is what you're
yeah.
going to report, and that's it. Doing that many times is where we find the value. Nina, I saw you come off mute, so I know you wanted to say something. Go for it.
I was just going to jump in to add that, we created task libraries for our lines of business. And we use those tasks to, kind of go through the flow of assessing for the high energy hazards and the direct and limited controls. And utilizing tasks has been really helpful for all the points that, Patrick stated earlier. And we're doing a lot of work through EEI as well in terms of, developing additional task libraries beyond what Exelon had originally in scope. So we have them for our distribution, transmission, gas, and now even through some of the EEI work, we're working on, generation, vegetation management, fleet, and supply operations. So just those have been really foundational for us and helpful in terms of conducting our observations and creating HECA.
Absolutely, and it will be a huge help for us in the future because, like for example, Doug, I think this is also a next step for you, right? If you can create consistent lists of the right amount of granularity in your tasks, then what you can do is you can filter for tasks and see the risk profile of that one task and the direct controls and the alternative controls and see where change may be needed, right?
Yeah, that is a goal. And I just heard about these task libraries that the energy folks have. I'm jealous, but yeah, but then that is a goal is because now you select that you don't have a direct control, but you don't know what the direct control would be. Like it would be nice to have here's a list of possible direct controls for you for this task, and um, yeah, that's a database. So that's something definitely that it's on the wish list of things we want in our HECA implementation.
Right, one step at a time. Again,
Yeah,
when we started collecting, so when HECA was first designed in my research, we didn't even collect direct control data for each high energy hazard. We just, if we saw any exposure, we said exposure, right? So then the second year, we started collecting more information on the direct control. And now we're building task libraries and building direct control inventories to make sure which direct controls, right? So this is definitely a journey, not, it's a marathon, not a race. So you gotta, if any, like I've done try to do some of these, and one thing I know for sure is sustaining is important, right? So that's a sustaining game rather than just forcing and achieving kind of game. But I would like to now, I know we have about 10 more minutes for our discussion and then we're going to go Q&A, so I'll keep us moving forward. And my next questions are related to use. So now that you've been exposed to this body of literature and the metric and collecting some data, um, what do you see? Is this going? Is this actually changing our outlook towards SIF prevention? Or I guess I'd like to hear your comments about what is happening and where we're going. So I'll start with you, Patrick, because I know you need to leave in 9 minutes.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Alif. Yeah, so we're still in our infancy, as I would say, but we're already seeing some interesting things. One, it's bringing a lot of awareness to hazards that the safety team might have known are sort of one of our big risks after classifying hundreds of events over the years, right? But down to the front line level, really bringing awareness to mobile equipment workers on foot and how big of a hazard we face on our work sites for that hazard, right? Things like that. Also, the comparing between work groups of some work groups might have better direct controls than others for a lot of similar hazards. So diving into sort of what that looks like and why, and what we can maybe bring over to other work groups. That's sort of what we're intending to really be some of the benefit. And then we talk a lot about the utilities, the industry at scale, looking at sort of where we have these gaps ultimately and where we can implement stronger controls. I think that's where the real power will become as more and more companies are coming on board with HECA. I think there'll be a lot of power with the industry in general with some of the learnings we'll have.
Yeah, absolutely. Doug, you want to take it away?
Yeah, I mean, a similar goal as far as the data goes. I think it's, figure out why one pile driving operation is scoring slightly better than another. I think the other aspect too is, when you're doing your assessment, you might think you got all the direct controls that you need or want, but it's kind of like that extra question, like, is that enough? Can we do better? Can we have a better direct control? Can we add a direct control? So I think it's that realization that seems like whatever the 60% is good, but is it really? Get them kind of maybe uncomfortable with that 60 and try to find another direct control. I think is kind of one of the goals is just the realization that maybe you're not as good as you think you are or safe as you think you are, and maybe make people a little bit uncomfortable and want to better their operation and better their task planning and in control. So I think that's one of our goals besides like the benchmarking and figuring out some weak spots.
Okay, Nina, go for it.
So I think for us, a few things. I know Patrick alluded to, the mobile equipment workers on foot. So EBOs did shit, like it revealed that there was things that we were right about. We felt like that was one of our greatest exposures, and it was. So it confirmed some of the strategy in terms of what we've been going after in terms of enhancing our direct controls around, roadside safety and working in roadways. So, that was great to see. I think right now we're really focused on our quality of our energy based observations. And I think here soon we're going to start to dive into how can we leverage what we're seeing from an exposure standpoint to, potentially influence future strategic initiatives. But, as part of starting to dive into that data, I'm sure we'll see those quality items that need to be addressed as well. So that's where we're at in terms of understanding, digesting the data, as well as what we've seen it confirm in terms of our strategy. And I also do think it's just really emphasizing where we are seeing stories where supervisors are fixing those direct controls, because I think that that really highlights how HECA can make us safer on a day-to-day basis and really give us that snapshot of what safety looks like in the field every day. And the more we can keep HECA pure in terms of collecting that data and seeing where those corrections are made real time in the field, we should be celebrating those, because that is just exactly why we wanted, to do this to begin with. And then, I just saw a question jump in the chat that if you want, I can.
Go
Maybe
for
we
it.
can
Go
jump
for
into
it.
that. So, from our strategy from the start, Rick, we wanted to ensure that this was an additive to traditional safety observations on our first line supervisors and safety professionals. So we did a 50-50 split so that 50% of the requirement was to do energy based observations to collect HECA, and 50% was traditional um, observations. So and our targets vary a little bit. So I think, there is, if you look at the Power to Prevent SIF website, there is a page on HECA that shows essentially like the confidence interval. So, like how many you should do to ensure that you're collecting the right number to have a data set that you can analyze and, trend for insights and for the ability to take action. And that's all based on, how many work hours that you have. So, your exposure hours essentially. But again, Power to Prevent SIF has that guidance in terms of like quantity, work hours, so that you can ensure you have the right confidence interval.
Absolutely. And before you go, Patrick, I'll ask you one final question, and then we'll say goodbye to you. But as a parting thought, what is your biggest recommendation? Where do you recommend this audience to go do after talking all about strengths and challenges that come with HECA?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think thinking back to buy-in with HECA, we weren't getting a lot of value out of our standard job site safety observations. And I think that's pretty common in a lot of companies is what are you really using the information for? And I think right away when you start to introduce HECA to a group, they already sort of see that potential of like how we could use this data for more value than what we're currently doing. So I think it's a pretty easy sell once you get people sort of familiar with it and how the potential future looks like. And I'm sure I'm not speaking for everyone on the call, but reach out. We're happy to help. The more we can kind of bring along in this journey, we're happy to help others get involved and get started with HECA and learn from some of our challenges we've run into. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Um, Doug, do you want to follow that up with more recommendations?
Sure. Um, Kind of along those lines too. I think one of them is just get started. I think the other one is it is going to look different for your company than everyone else's, and that's okay. You're going to need to figure it out on your own, but definitely reach out. There's a lot of good resources out there. I think something that helped us, I know helped my VP, and this isn't a plug or whatever for Sunt, but Sunt holds a Sticky Academy, and you go down there, and I think the big realization there is that they've been doing it for 5 or 6 years now, and they're still kind of figuring it out too. Like it is. I don't think you're ever um, done with it. So I think if you got, check that out. You don't have to do it like Sutton does it, but I think that's kind of the message is that it's okay to make it work for your company, and then just keep tweaking it. And I think that the last bit is, if you're going to add something, and this is just kind of my personal opinion too, is if you're going to add HECA, take something else away that's not adding value. And I think that's a good trade off for the frontline supervisors and PMTs. Like we're going to start doing this, but we're going to take away whatever. And maybe the decluttering project here will have all those answers for us here soon, so we know what we can take away and not skip a beat. So that's mine. Just get started, and it's going to be a journey.
Okay. Go for it, Nina.
So it's a journey. It is truly a journey. It doesn't happen overnight, and none of us have it all figured out. And I echo, Doug's comments and Patrick's comments, and I think, all of us are willing to help bring anyone, along. We are an open book to just kind of, help and support, share our experiences, as well as what we would do differently. Let our growing pains help you so you don't have to stumble through those same obstacles. And I just, I think that this is a really exciting time in safety. And I think that this is, we're not even where we're going to get to, and it's really exciting to see where safety is going. And I really think that HECA is going to be great for us, and what we're going to be able to learn from each other and gain from it. So just open book and happy to help, and I want to learn from others too. So reach out.
Awesome. All right, now let's go into Q&A. Are you guys ready for some questions?
Sure.
The first
Yeah.
one's coming for you from Brad McLean, Doug. So it's coming from a high place. He'd like you to say a little bit more about alternate controls can get you some bonus points on HECA. Because I think what he's alluding to is that alternate controls doesn't really count towards HECA. It's basically something different, right? So go for it.
Yeah, I guess to our frontline supervisors or engineers, if we could, you have your heck analysis, which you're just looking at your direct controls. Um, but now there's some subscribed alternative controls or safeguards or whatever people are calling them. Where if you do two of these other things, it's not quite a direct control, but it's close as far as reducing the probability that a SIF could happen because of these two other safeguards or alternative controls you have in place. So if when we go to implement this, there's going to be a score that's just your true HECA score, but I think it might spit out on the back end like if you got whatever it is, for hazards or energy sources that don't have direct controls, but they got three of them got alternative controls. Maybe it bumps your score up where you're now you're 9 out of 10 as opposed to 6 out of 10 as you were before. So maybe the output is a little bit better score to make kind of more comfortable with what the situation is if the alternative controls are followed per the rules. So um, we're kind of blending that in there as I don't know, just it's kind of something a little bit extra that they might not know that they're not doing a true hecka at the end, but it makes them feel better about it.
Right,
Easier
and
to
I
swallow
think
them.
there could be changes in implementation, right? Like you report a true hacker score, and then everything you do on top of that with alternative controls, etc., could be kept separately. But I'm really liking this idea that staying consistent where you can and trying to adapt it to your culture without changing the core, right? In your data, what you can easily do is report inconsistent well inconsistency like inconsistencies out basically, so like you know exactly where you're consistent and not consistent and trying to build towards that consistency. um Nina, I have a question for you and I think you'll
Okay.
like this one. Is How is this HECA going to um, affect our other metrics? Like, how does this metric space will look like? Will it also be will we be using this in conjunction with TRIR or SIFs or what exactly is going on with others?
Yeah, so I think if you remember earlier, before when we were starting this session, Alif had a slide where she showed leading, monitoring, and lagging indicators, right? So our lagging indicators are our SEER, our TRIR, OSHA recordable rates, and then HECA is that monitoring metric. And then the leading indicators is where you start talking about pre-job brief quality assessments, and when I say quality assessments, I'm really focusing on that discussion during that pre-job brief. And if you follow the research from CSRA, and Arnie actually came out and, we participated in this research project where you see where there is a higher quality of a pre-job briefing in your monitoring and HECA, you should in turn see that there is higher usage of direct controls, which then in turn should drive down those lagging metrics. So should be driving down that TRIR, SEER rates focused on SIFs. So that's really that connection. in terms of that suite of benchmark metrics and what you should see and how it correlates and drives and works together. And I think in terms of the future, right now we're using task libraries. Theoretically, it would be great to tie pre job brief quality assessments to specific tasks. And so that way you can see direct control usage in terms of the discussion. So, how is the job going to go? And then, how safe was the job? So, looking at it by tasks is just that's why tasks are so fundamental, because they're really going to give us that ability to correlate some of these metrics and take a look at high energy hazards, as well as just how safe we are and what are the impacts to see our lagging indicators go down. So I don't know, Leaf, you may want to add more from that correlation between the benchmark or between the suite of metrics, but
Right.
that's
And
what I meant.
you did an absolutely beautiful job in summarizing the research findings. Yes, so there were correlations and relationships found between pre-job brief quality, HECA, and TRIR metrics. So, yes, HECA has found effectiveness, especially in, I believe, for utilities, that it actually reduced TRIR over time. One thing I wanted to add, though, I think this is an important thing to say before we stop here, is HECA score was never meant as a performance metric. Since HECA score is a self-reported observation, the score itself, the moment it turns into a target, similar to target zero, it will go either 100% all the time or whatever percent you liked it to be, right? We know that people are good people, want to give us the metrics we want, and for HECA, it is very easy to do it. So that kind of manipulation is such a big risk for HECA. That's why we always recommend that HECA targets do not spill into HECA scores. Now, for HECA data collection, we can have a conversation about that, but the HECA scores should never be tied to an executive target or goal. But we have 2 minutes left. So I wanted to ask my panelists, Doug and Nina. We lost Patrick, unfortunately, he had to go. But anything else that you want to leave the audience with before we close?
I think just to echo what Elise said there at the end kind of just rings true for me and what HECA has done as far as just in my career. I think between the tyranny of TRIR and HECA, and like it is finally time for us to tell ourselves the truth on what's really happening. I think we got really good at injury management, and sometimes being really good at that kind of masks what's really going on. And I think HECA's that opportunity. That's why like a 60% HECA doesn't really bother me. It is what it is, and that's as contractors we are paid to deal with risky stuff. That's why the client's not doing it themselves. So we try to control as much as we can, but that what we can't control or we with experience or direct control or what I mean that's priced into what we do. And so it's our ability to steal some turns and build capacity so things can fail safely. And that's what HECA helps us to do. And I think it's finally the safety industry is catching up with some hard data and numbers to back that all up. And it feels good to just talk what's actually going on. Talk the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Nina?
Yeah, I loved that quote, Doug, and I think that's what the beauty is in HECA, and that's why I say you want to keep it pure. We want to get what's really going on in the field. We don't want this to be that check the box exercise to hit a target. And that's why we've really been strong on saying no HECA targets, because we come from a culture where if you want 100%, we'll get you 100%. But that means you're going to lose sight of what's really happening and that pulse on safety in the field. And so just, I think this is a journey. It takes time and start small. Starting small is better than not starting at all. And it's, take those small steps, and each small win will be a win and turn into a big W over time. So don't think just because you're going to start small that it's not worth starting. Sometimes you just got to pull the band-aid and go for it. So
Well,
That's
thank
all
you
I
so
have.
much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so very much to both of you. We're on time, so I'd like to finish right here, but this video will be online later, so if you wanted to share it around, please do so. I will also follow up with an email. And our next session is, not surprisingly, is on alternative controls. So if you heard about it today, you're going to hear a lot more about it in our next session on April 17th. Now, this time we're going to be on a Thursday, so please watch out for the calendar invite. But thank you, everyone, and see you later, I guess. Have a great one. Bye.
Yep.